Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, is made possible in part by Allstate and the Searle Funds at the Chicago Community Trust.
Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices. I'm Phil Ponce. Thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us. On the show tonight, reaction from a local women's organization on the Supreme Court's seismic ruling overturning Roe v. Wade. The Chicago Police Department issues a finalized foot pursuit policy. We'll hear from community members on whether it's good for the public. As the city prepares for Pride Weekend, a look at the turbulent political climate for LGBTQ rights. The story behind the creation of one of Chicago's most visible murals.
The lime, the hibiscus, it just brings it back to summer.
And the hermanos from Hermosa Brewing, up the flavors of Mexico at Casa Humilde Cerveceria. First off tonight, though, the leaked memo of the Supreme Court draft signaled the overturning of Roe v. Wade months ago, the official ruling that came this week still came as a jolt. The decision ends 5 decades of federal abortion rights. It means that going forward, it will be determined by individual states. Mujeres Latinas en Acción President Linda Tortolero says even though Illinois will see no change in abortion access as a result, her organization and others like it are working to ensure abortion remains legal here.
We have, as a Latina with family members who live in other parts of the United States, we may have family members or friends who contact us and say, so-and-so is needing abortion or other types of reproductive health care. Can you help? And that may never happen before. So we should, as a community, be well educated, especially when language becomes a deterrent or even access because of money. Our community, for many of us, we're frontline essential workers, we're low income. How are we going to make sure that our sisters and comadres and tias and primas all have access? We have to have resources available for incidents when that's happened. And that's why I know that in Illinois, there have been so many of our partners like Planned Parenthood who have been galvanizing the forces ahead of time. And we need to join them in making sure that we can help all those women who are trying to seek abortion or other reproductive health care to come to Illinois and make this a place where they feel that they are able to exercise their autonomy over their bodies.
And later in the program, we look at the potential impact the ruling could have on gay marriage. The Chicago Police Department has unveiled a new foot pursuit policy that it says will improve safety for both police and civilians. The policy limits when officers can pursue people on foot to times when, quote, they have reasonable, articulable suspicion or probable cause that the person has committed, is committing, or is about to commit a felony or certain Class A misdemeanors. The policy prohibits officers from pursuing people for only running from police, nor can they pursue people for parking and ordinance violations and certain traffic offenses. The policy comes a year after officers shot and killed 22-year-old Anthony Alvarez and 13-year-old Adam Toledo in separate shootings that followed foot pursuits. Here is Police Superintendent David Brown on the new policy.
I think this policy, without question, hits the right note in balancing officer safety, our ability to capture offenders, but do it in a way that's constitutional.
And joining us now with more are Valdemar Cruz, former Cicero police sergeant and president of the Puerto Rican Police Association, photojournalist Mateo Zapata, and Baltasar Enriquez, president of the community-based organization Little Village Community Council. We also invited the Chicago Police Department to join this conversation, but they declined. Baltasar Enriquez, your reaction to the new policy?
So our reaction, we're happy that this policy is going to be enacted, but we're not excited because we can have 1,000 policies, and if the police department doesn't follow them, then what's the point, right? And we could give an example. They were given a policy. Officer Ella French was given instructions to wait for backup when you have more than 3 passengers, and they didn't follow the policy, and the result was her death. So that's the problem, that we could have all the policy we want, but if the police department is not going to follow them, there's no point on having them. And this policy protects people like me, people with my color, people with my hairstyle, people with my image. So this policy is for people like me and people of color. So
I think we may have lost your audio. Let me switch over to Valdemar Cruz. As a former police officer yourself, your reaction to the new policy?
So these new policies always attack the police. We're not clairvoyant, we can't read the criminal's mind. Mr. Baltasar criticized a police officer, which is kind of disrespectful, who died in the line of duty, giving her life to the city. And but we don't have an issue. Again, we don't have an issue. We don't create laws to fight criminals. All it is to handcuff the police, don't let them do their job, continue to restrict our ability to make our community safer, because some people in the community want to make criminals as victims when they are offenders.
Mateo Zapata, do you think this new policy will impact how police interact with people of color?
No, I think it's largely performative for the most part, to be honest. At the core of the issue, I think there's just a lack of accountability for police officers that do kill Black and brown people, specifically in Chicago. I think we've seen it not just recently in the last 2 years, but it's been an ongoing culture of just a lack of accountability for police. And I don't think that the foot pursuit policy is going to really help. I think it's just performative at the end of the day.
Waldemar Cruz, your reaction to that. Have police been unaccountable?
No, we've had many officers fired from the line of duty, fired from their jobs. It's getting tiring hearing brown and Black people say that it's a racial thing when the majority of police officers in the city of Chicago are minorities. Let's just be factual about this. Most police officers are Black and brown and females, and we continue to hear this. I am of Puerto Rican descent. I grew up in Humboldt Park area with gangs around me, and we deal with a lot of violence. But we always want to criticize the police and never the offenders, never the gang bangers, never the people committing the crimes. It's always the police.
Baltasar, Enriquez, how about that? Have the police been subject to undue scrutiny, or do you think it's high time for a policy like this to be put in place?
So, this policy is good to be in place. And again, let me answer something that Waldemar said. I'm not criticizing the police officer. What I'm doing is proving that we could have policies, and even if we have policies, the police officers don't follow it, and there's no repercussions for them. So that's the problem. We have paid millions of dollars out of their mistakes, and we're tired ourselves. We, the taxpayers, are tired of paying millions of dollars for their mistakes. So just like a couple of weeks ago, they shot a 13-year-old. Even though he had his hands up, he still got shot in his back. So those are the things that we're against. Killer cops, bad behavior, and police brutality. We here at the Little Village Community Council, that's what we're pushing, to reform the police department, and the police department should engage with us and listen to us so we could have a community-based police department, not a military-based police department. That is one of the issues here in Little Village. And yes, some of the officers are not Spanish speakers, but they're just as worse as those racist ones, because they're putting their knees on your back, they're putting their gun on your face, and they're our color. So he is right on that point, but these officers have turned just like the bad behavior that their officers have been doing for years.
Waldemar Cruz, one of the arguments that the Chicago Police Department makes is that this is actually going to make things safer for officers. Will it?
Well, it's going to make it safer for officers, because officers are going to say, unless the person is committing a serious crime, I'm not chasing them. The counteraction about that is that serious offenders are going to roam the streets, are going to continue to commit crimes. And until we find a happy medium, until we find a way to talk to each other instead of blaming each other, we will continue to see these ordinances, these laws passed to restrict police officers and their duties.
Mateo Zapata, what options do police officers have to foot pursuit when they suspect somebody has committed a serious crime?
Just to reference the comments made earlier in regards to what I was saying, I don't think that accountability has been put forth. The officers that killed Anthony Alvarez and Adam Toledo, there's no charges against them. And even if you look at a police officer who had charges brought against them, like Jason Van Dyke for shooting Laquan McDonald 16 times, he served less than half of his sentence, which was about 3 years. And yes, the majority of people that the Chicago Police Department kills in this city are black and brown. To answer your question that you asked, I think that there has to be an accountability that's put forth, and there has to be an understanding within the Chicago Police Department that you can't and you should not shoot someone in the back, and that you can and should not shoot someone who has their hands up in the air and is unarmed. It's that simple.
Waldemar Cruz, we're almost out of time. I'll give you the last word. What do you want the public to take away from this discussion?
Well, we need to work together. We need to make sure that we are building a police department that keeps everyone safe. And the problem is that we continue to ignore the violence that offenders do to police officers. The last three police officers shot in the line of duty recently were all brown colored. We don't hear nothing about that. We don't hear any complaint about that. And until the public starts saying, hey, we want safety and we want to give the police some control back, we will continue to see the violence grow that is happening in the city of Chicago today.
And that's where we'll have to leave it. Thank you, gentlemen. Our thanks to Waldemar Cruz, Mateo Zapata, and Baltasar Enriquez.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And up next, as Pride Month comes to an end, we talk with members of the LGBTQ community about the potential impact of the Supreme Court ruling overturning Roe v. Wade and about some controversial legislation. The Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade raises the question of whether the constitutionality of gay marriage could soon be on the table. Also, activists are mobilizing as about 12 states are proposing legislation affecting LGBTQ Americans. Earlier this year, a so-called Don't Say Gay bill preventing teachers from discussing sexual orientation or gender identity was signed into law in Florida. That move has become a possible template for other states to follow. So, what's next for the LGBTQ rights? Joining us now to share his thoughts are Antonio Santos, Executive Director of the Gage Park Latinx Council. Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, your reaction to what the Supreme Court did insofar as it might impact gay rights and specifically gay marriage.
Absolutely. So I think that what the Supreme Court did today was absolutely egregious, a violation to body autonomy, which is also an LGBTQIA plus issue as we speak about trans folks and how their bodies are legislated against. We also know that taking away 50 years of precedence opens the door to gay marriage being next on the chopping block. Gay marriage has been around for less than a decade as law of the land. And I could see that Republicans would like to leave it up to states to make those decisions. And we know that when states are left to make those decisions, queer people and women suffer.
When you speak to colleagues, do they think that the possibility exists now for same-sex marriage to be in jeopardy as far as a constitutional right?
Absolutely. Our rights are never guaranteed. We were not thought of in the Constitution when these laws were made. So as queer people, we know that we always have to be vigilant and continuously organizing for our basic human rights because they are always under attack. So I would not be surprised if gay marriage was next on the chopping block, and actually we saw it mentioned in the leaked documents.
As you know, about a dozen states are considering laws similar to Florida's, and in Florida, the law there basically seeks to prohibit schools from using a curriculum or discussing topics of gender identity or sexual orientation. Is there a backlash right now against LGBTQ people?
Yeah, I would say that there is a backlash. There has been a backlash. There have always been folks pushing to take away our rights. The idea that children are not allowed to learn about queer history is problematic. It's the same thing with critical race theory and the idea that we should not talk about race in schools. Keeping marginalized people's histories erased makes it easier to perpetuate crimes against them and take away their rights.
I think it's fair to say that there was a widespread belief in many quarters that things had improved for LGBTQ people. Why do you think this backlash is happening?
I think that folks feel that things have improved for the LGBTQIA plus community because we have hyper visibility right now. Through non-mainstream platforms, queerness has come to the mainstream, and that's seen as threatening. People liked it better when they didn't see LGBTQIA plus people in movies or books or classrooms. The fact that they are being embraced as humans and as Americans and as part of this country is threatening for people who wish that we simply didn't exist.
So if there is in fact a backlash taking place, what can be done about it?
I think that now is the time where we need to embrace LGBTQIA plus youth and children and create spaces for them to feel affirmed and loved, because there are many people that want the opposite for them, that want them to be isolated, and that simply is not something we are able to do anymore.
Looking at the big picture, what would you say is the most pressing issue facing LGBTQ people?
I think that the threat on LGBTQIA plus youth is the biggest issue, because that's the next generation. We know that the next generation is far more open-minded about LGBTQIA plus topics, and that they are more expressive of their gender and identity and sexuality, and that is the threat. And so again, as queer elders, it is our space to create safe spaces for young people to create community and express themselves, because if it was up to the Republicans, queer youth would have nowhere to go.
Antonio Santos, thank you for your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And up next, bottling up memories and the taste of childhood summers. So stay with us. For lovers of a craft brew, Chicago's beer steins overflow with options. You can belly up to more than 160 craft breweries in the city. But even here, it's rare to find a microbrew crafted by Latinos. Lucky for Chicagoans, there's a spot that offers brews with all the flavors of Mexico, created by a pair of hermanos from Hermosa. Producer Erica Gunderson hoisted a pint or two at Casa Humilde Cerveceria.
I think that the coolest thing, like when we release a beer, is kind of seeing our generation react to it. And we get so many people, well, all kinds of people, age-wise, where they relate to it so much. The lime, the hibiscus, it just brings it back to summer. It brings it back to all of our summer.
When people try our beer, we want them to help them, like, sometimes bring back their memories, because a lot of ingredients we use, are from my memories, like maize. Maize is such an important ingredient in our culture, so we use maize.
Tip back a cold Casa Humilde cerveza, and you'll get a taste of Mexican foodways in every sip.
This last batch we have, we actually use our own coffee now that we roasted.
Tunas, the prickly pear, the hibiscus, the lime. We've used mangoes. We've used piña. We've used pepino. We've used a lot of stuff that just kind of a little nostalgic.
Those flavors, the flavors of a childhood spent playing soccer on the streets of Hermosa and summers spent with family in Durango, form the foundation of Casa Humilde Cerveceria. The craft brewery is headed up by Chicago brothers Jose and Javier Lopez. But back before they were brewers, the brothers say they simply enjoyed craft beer.
Well, Javier kind of got me into craft beer. He was drinking craft beer before me.
Like, really enjoyed it.
And he would have at his house just fridges full of craft beer. Like sometimes he would have no milk, no eggs, but just a fridge full of so many stouts and IPAs.
In the summer of 2015, the brothers turned their shared obsession into a business.
I had a band, so I had a Duranguense band here in Chicago. Did that for about 10 years, and I was kind of done with that. So I told my brother, hey, let's try making beer. I told him $600 and get us like a stovetop kit.
He lied.
Yeah. Glass carboys, we do it on the stove, but that turned into well over like $30,000 in equipment.
We took everything out of the living room, and that was our brew house.
Yeah, we kind of, once we saw everything it takes and what's possible, we kind of went all in. We're like, oh, let's just keep working at it.
After a few years of homebrewing, the Lopez brothers realized their beers had taken on a manifestly Mexican identity.
First name we had kind of when we started homebrewing was Auxiliary Brewing.
That name you couldn't relate to anything from our cultures. It doesn't communicate to the consumer, to our customers, what we want to.
They say a rebrand to Casa Humilde better reflected their flavors and their family's values.
Just how it's upbringing from our parents, our grandmother, and just taught us to be humble. We help people. We're not expecting nothing in return. Just you give your best, you know. And part of it is we started brewing at home too.
In 2019, the Lopez brothers moved their operations here to District Brew Yards, where beer lovers can sample their flagship brews as well as a few more experimental flavors. That's really good.
We just did a stout for this past winter called horchata. So it's an horchata-inspired stout. You know, it did very well for us. People really enjoyed it. Strong beer, about 8%, but it delivers the full flavor of horchata in it.
Now they're introducing their beers to people from all over the city, broadening the ideas of what cerveza can be.
And with our culture, like a lot of people are used to drinking Tecate and Modelo, all these beers, one of the things we're most proud of, where we can introduce the macro beer drinkers to other styles, other beers.
Getting people to experience a whole different world.
For Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, this is Erica Gunderson.
And the Lopez brothers are not stopping at beer. They've also begun roasting their own coffee with beans from Mexico under the Casa Humilde label. And if you'd like to enjoy some Mexican sounds along with your Mexican beer, Casa Humilde is hosting a music and beer festival in Joliet on July 3rd. You'll find more on that on our website. Not many muralists can say their work is seen by hundreds of thousands of people every day, but Chicago artist Ascend can make that claim. His towering work on the site of Carnival Restaurant in the West Loop is hard to miss at its site overlooking the Kennedy Expressway. The vibrant mural was created in the fall of 2020, and the artist says he hopes his mural's message offered a calming respite during a turbulent time.
I'm Ascend, and the title of the mural is Love Always Wins. We're in an area of downtown West Loop where you get a lot of foot traffic here. You get the highway, you get about 500,000 cars a day. Love Always Wins is just a message for everyone that passes by here, and something that includes everyone in the city. We started the mural October 6th of 2020, and we ended it December 30th of 2020. It was just another artist and I. His name is Lex. He assisted me during the whole process. We went through snow, sleet, rain, even hot days. Randomly, October had some hot days also. Once you're out here, the sounds of the highway, the sounds of the car are, it's extremely loud, 24/7. We had a swing stage that was about 30 feet wide. A few times we were up there, the wind moved the swing stage back a couple feet from the wall, so you're over there just kind of swinging. The scale is enormous. Each of those blue petals are over, but I'm a little over 6 feet, 6'2". They were about 7 feet tall. And from here, they look tiny. I didn't want to cut any corners. Every petal, every fade, every shade, highlight, it had to be there exactly how I designed it. Every flower has at least 7, 8 layers of spray paint. I was a kid that would look at walls and get inspired all the time, and that's how my love for murals started. That's how my love for graffiti started. The graffiti community that exists in Chicago since the 80s, it saved a lot of us from a lot of trouble. It saved a lot of us from gangs. A lot of us made careers out of it. It really turned into something that meant a lot for us in our lives. So I feel very grateful to be able to create something that people respond to in that way, because the artwork is not about me. It's about creating something that people appreciate. And that's what it really is. Give art and, show what we could do with our ability, with our talent, for people.
And you can find more on our mural series on our website. And that is our show for this weekend. If you're watching us on Saturday night, know that you can also catch Latino Voices and Black Voices on Sundays beginning at 10 p.m. And Monday at noon, join Paris Schutz for our next virtual community conversation. We'll talk about youth mental illness ahead of the PBS Hiding in Plain Sight documentary. To RSVP, visit WTTW.com/events. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, I'm Phil Ponce. Thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us. Stay healthy, stay safe, and buenas noches.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a proud sponsor of diversity, equity, and inclusion-focused free continuing legal education for lawyers throughout the region.